Sometimes when fans say things, it's because they know what they're talking about. Sometimes they say things to intentionally stir the pot. Sometimes fans say things just to have a little bit of fun. Sometimes fans say things because they are dumb. All of those can apply to fans at different points in time. All of us. Especially me. And one of those suggestions that in some ways to me fits into several of those categories is this thought of the Cleveland Browns with the first and fourth overall pick taking quarterback with each of those picks. Some of it is in fun because we're knocking the skid marks of the NFL. Oh, it gives them two chances to get it right because God knows you give them one, they don't get it right. That's not inaccurate. They can't get the quarterback position right. So have a little fun with it. Talk about, well, you might as well freaking take two of them. You're bound to get one of them right. Some people will say it just to stir the pot. Like, imagine what would happen if the Browns took a quarterback of both number 1 and number 4. We're stirring that shit right up. And sometimes it's just people being stupid. And it's one of these things. I've seen suggestions, I've been asked questions and Q&As and stuff about this. And I talk about it, and I kind of sort of don't take it seriously, and I kind of dismiss it, because I can't believe anybody would think about this in a serious way. Ding dong, that's wrong. Imagine my surprise over the past couple of weeks as I've heard multiple talking heads on multiple sports media outlets talk about the scenario of the Browns potentially taking a quarterback at number 1 and number 4. And not just talking about it, but in some cases it seems like people trying to make justifications or defenses for such a dumb and ridiculous strategy. And then to top it all off, reportedly, and since we're talking about the Browns, new regime, my ass, anything is possible. Apparently there have been discussions in the war room about the Browns doing exactly this. Now this all could be much ado about nothing, and probably is, but we're talking about a theory here, a suggestion. So I can react to that theory and suggestion for the pure sheer ridiculousness that it is. If you have 2 picks in the top 5, and you burn them both on the same position, not to mention specifically, burn both of them on quarterbacks, you deserve to be immediately fired. Not promoted, not praised, fired. Let's think about this situation. And let's look at this year's draft. And let's just say, for example, Josh Allen went to the Browns at number 1, or Sam Darnold went number 1 to the Browns. Either way, one of those two went number 1. They're thinking at that moment that they are going to be the face of the franchise for the Cleveland Browns for the next 15 years. They expect the future of that organization to be in their hands. They expect to be treated with kind of kid gloves, but more so getting a lion's share of the emphasis and focus because ultimately the team took the guy number 1 overall for a reason, coming off of a historically bad, skid mark worthy 0-16 season. You have a reasonable expectation to believe that you're going to be the dude. So imagine your reaction less than a half hour later when they take another freaking quarterback 3 picks later. Why would you sit there and burn 2 top 5 picks into a position where, especially based off of the Cleveland Browns and this love of Tyrod Taylor as their bridge quarterback, you're talking about 2 top 5 picks that might not see the field much for you at all, if at all, in 2018. Literally, redshirting 2 top 5 picks. Literally, not playing either one of them. Instead of getting guys that can make a difference and make an impact now and in the future, you're basically spinning your wheels to get 2 guys at the same spot. So now, for a coaching staff, you're trying to divide your attention between, let's say, Sam Darnold went number 1 and Josh Allen went number 4. Now you're trying to divide and conquer your time between Darnold and Allen, and eventually you create a situation where some of the locker room maybe is behind Darnold. Some of the locker room is behind Allen. And for both of these young guys, They always have that constant fear of looking over their shoulder. And that is not a situation you want to put a young quarterback in. You want that guy to compete, yes. But to literally sit there and have to worry day after day about if I have one bad game, Christ's sakes, if Sam Darnold has a bad game, he's worried. Are they going to put in Josh Allen because they fucking spent the 4th overall pick on him? Or let's say Josh Allen gets a couple of games to run and all of a sudden he has a bad game or two. He's like, oh my God, I might have blown my chance because now they took Sam number 1 overall, so they're always going to default to him. It's just ridiculous, this whole notion of, well, you take both quarterbacks and then you eventually trade one of them. No, you trade the freaking picks. You don't even play around and screw around with that. You get a deal done for those picks, or you take a different player at a different position. I think about going back to the Cowboys almost 3 decades ago and all the praise that Jimmy Johnson gets for taking Troy Aikman and the Herschel Walker trade and Emmitt Smith and so on and so forth. The way he mastered the NFL draft, the NFL draft pick value chart that many of you have heard me talk about, many of you are at least familiar with, that he created in the early 90s. So there's no question he had an impact or a legacy. But if I remember correctly, the early run of Troy Aikman's career wasn't very good because not only was he on a crappy team, coming off of a 1-15 or whatever the hell it was season in 88, getting drafted in 89, he got beat up all to hell. He had limited talent around him. It was a horrible situation. And oh, by the way, the one game the Cowboys won in 1989, he didn't play in. He didn't start. And I remember Jimmy Johnson, if I recall correctly, spending like a first-round supplemental pick, which means that first-round pick goes away in a future year, on somebody like Steve Walsh, a guy who had won him a national title at the U. Now you got Troy Aikman, who you had just crowned as the future of the franchise, taking him number 1 overall in that great draft class of 89. And lo and behold, here comes Steve Walsh. Imagine what Troy Aikman's thinking when he's sitting there and seeing, oh my God, this is the guy Jimmy Johnson won a national championship with. This is a guy that Jimmy Johnson has a better relationship with. So ultimately, when all else fails, he's going to default to Steve freaking Walsh. It was an incredibly unnecessary waste of draft resources, and even if you say later on they popped off Walsh and got picks and this and that, but it creates an environment and a situation that isn't healthy for either player. And it most certainly is not something that the organization benefits long-term from. I can't believe, other than being smartasses or trying to have some fun or just stir the pot, that anybody would actually think that this is sound NFL draft logic to take a quarterback number 1 overall and then turn around and take another one at number 4. And in some cases, people saying, you keep both of them. Are you crazy? Or am I crazy? No. If you think the Browns should take a quarterback at both number 1 and number 4, you're crazy. That is a recipe for disaster, a strategy that is doomed to fail and keep the Browns as the skid marks of the NFL for another decade as they watch as both of those kids that they took at quarterback in the top 5 don't pan out and become franchise quarterbacks because you divided your time between the two of them. You've split your locker room. You can't fully invest in developing one of them because basically, bottom line, you're sitting there and trying to validate both top 5 picks. What, you're waiting for a team to have a quarterback go down and then hope they're desperate enough to trade for one of your dudes? What a dumb dick freaking strategy that is. And if the Browns did something like that, they deserve every video I've ever done crapping on them and then some. Of all the dumb crap they've done over the years, this would probably be the single stupidest, unnecessary thing of all.